Hi, it's Katrina! From ancient hoards of mythical jewelry left underground to a possible lost civilization destroyed by a volcano, here are 9 of the most mysterious archaeological artifacts ever found. Number 9. Giant kites. In Central Asia, you will probably find one of the oldest animal traps in human history. Known as desert kites, they are found in extremely remote areas, and very few people have ever seen them. Thanks to aerial photography and satellite data, nearly 5,000 desert kites and arrow formations have been found in many countries. From the ground, they just look like mounds of rocks, but from space, you can see the unique shapes they make. Archaeologists believe that these shapes suggest that there were massive herds of animals guided inside, with the corners keeping them essentially trapped. Believed to have been built over generations by nomads some 2,500 years ago, the structures were designed to divert large numbers of animals into pits at the end. These unusual kites caught the attention of science about a century ago, when pilots in World War I announced that there were walls forming large triangles, or polygons, across the deserts of Jordan, Israel, Syria, and Saudi Arabia. Experts have been debating the function of these strange structures ever since. Archaeologist Shamil Amirov uses satellite imagery to map the artifacts in Uzbekistan. He says that they go along the same routes as the antelope migration, guiding thousands of animals into the killing pits. The 2 lines forming the kite would push the running animals to the end, where there are these big pits with sharp rocks at the bottom that they would fall into. This huge construction project stretching across entire desert areas demonstrates a great collective hunting effort. Today, these traps remain almost intact, waiting for a migration of wild beasts that never comes. Number 8. Skystone. Skystone is a very enigmatic and mysterious blue rock. There are different reports regarding how it was discovered, but it is believed to be made mostly out of oxygen and was spotted in a gold pit in Sierra Leone in the early 1990s. Diamond and gem prospector David Ledbetter mined and explored gem deposits all over the world and purchased the area in Sierra Leone for gold and diamond mining. Here is where he spotted the bright blue stone. Legend goes that the local people believed the blue stones were beings who once lived in the sky, but were punished by the gods and turned into rocks where they fell to earth, and so they called it Skystone. The discovery is also attributed to geologist and archaeologist Angelo Pitoni, who is said to have found the Skystone in a little town near Freetown, Sierra Leone. When he saw it, he was pretty puzzled, so he sent it off to a number of universities. They all responded, confirming that it was indeed unlike any other stone they found in nature thus far, although they thought that it was artificial. Pitoni wasn't sure what to think. In fact, when its composition was tested, it was found to be over 77% oxygen. It also contained trace elements of silicon, carbon, sodium, and calcium. Sierra Leone natives have seen this type of stone before, but it is said to mostly be found in soil layers which are about 14,000 years old. Could this mean that the Skystone is a relic from an ancient civilization? Its composition raises many questions as to whether it's natural or synthetic, and whether it was formed in the ground or maybe came from the sky, perhaps on meteors. There is now a collection of Skystone owned by the Ledbetter Family, and the father and son team, and from what I can tell, have done several documentaries on this mysterious stone. For now, this remains unsolved. Number 7. Santorini and Atlantis. While the existence of Atlantis is mostly believed to be a myth, some scholars and scientists of the past have claimed that Santorini is a good candidate for the lost city of Atlantis. According to Plato's account, the advanced civilization was punished by the gods as the people became arrogant and greedy. The once circular land of Atlantis is said to have sunk to the bottom of the sea after it was hit by a series of natural disasters. Santorini and its surrounding islands are what is left after volcanic eruption destroyed it in the Bronze Age between 1630 and 1550 BC. The eruption, earthquake, and consequent tsunami was felt throughout the ancient world. This may have led to the fall of the Minoans, who were considered to be very advanced for their time. Researchers are thinking that perhaps the real earthquake and subsequent tsunami is what may have inspired the legend of Atlantis. The tsunami may have been strong enough to run some 600 miles from Santorini to the far eastern shores of the Mediterranean, leaving a large amount of debris in its wake off the coast of Israel. Live Science reported that scientists searching for the underwater city of Caesarea in Israel were diving as far as 65 feet off the coast of the ancient city to see what caused its collapse. They collected long tubes of sediment along the ocean floor with machinery in order to not contaminate anything. Turns out, there's a big layer of about 16 inches of sediment found inside these core samples, deposited roughly around the same time of the tsunami from the Bronze Age. According to experts, given the enormous layer of this sediment, it could not be attributed to just a regular storm because they don't move the ocean floor on this scale. Without a doubt, these findings support the idea that the tsunami and other secondary results of the Santorini eruption were truly massive. This was all discovered by accident. Remember, the divers were studying the underwater city of Caesarea for completely different reasons. The terrifying tsunami affected many ancient cities along the coast of the Mediterranean, and something of this size would have fueled myths and legends of angry gods. Perhaps there is a grain of collective truth to the story of Atlantis, as people in the ancient world felt the devastating effects themselves. Even without conclusive evidence, the story of Atlantis continues to capture people's imagination. What do you think of this theory? Let me know in the comments below. Number 6. Plague Pit. In 2017, archaeologists discovered what has come to be known as the Plague Pit, which is a mass grave meant exclusively to bury victims of the Black Death. The Black Death was the most notorious and deadliest plague that's ever beset humanity, leading to an estimated 75 million deaths, on low estimates. Some studies put the number as high as 200 million. It started in 1346 and then continued to ravage Europe until 1353. It took around 60% of the British population alone. This plague pit was discovered in North Lincolnshire in Thornton Abbey. The mass grave contained some 48 skeletal remains, of which 27 were children. Thornton Abbey is a very rural area of Lincolnshire, and this excavation reveals further facts about just how difficult it must have been to face a plague like this in the 1300s. Tiny towns were not equipped to handle a disease like this, and the plague pit speaks to that fact. They discovered that this was a plague pit by testing DNA from the remains. When they did, they discovered that Yersinia Pestis, the bacteria that leads to the plague, was indeed present. They also found the so-called Tau cross, which was a pendant that was meant to keep the plague away. This pendant is associated with Saint Anthony of Egypt. Unfortunately, the pendant did not protect these poor people. They met a tragic end, but we have learned a lot about the way life was during these times due to this preserved burial pit. Number 5. The Shroud of Turin. The Shroud of Turin has baffled archaeologists and scientists alike for years. The shroud is a piece of linen cloth that appears to depict the image of a man in the negative, with the dark coloring appearing against the pale linen background. To many, it is a sacred relic that served as the burial shroud of Jesus Christ, used to wrap him after he was taken down from the cross. It is one of the most studied, analyzed, revered, and controversial artifacts in the world. The shroud first appeared in France during the 1350s, when a French knight brought the shroud to a church and presented it to the dean as the burial shroud of Jesus. There is no real way of knowing where it was before that time or how the knight obtained it. Even back then, there was controversy as Pope Clement VII received a letter that an artist had forged the shroud. However, the Pope said the church could continue to display it as an icon, even if it wasn't a historical relic. It survived theft, war, a fire, and who knows what else until it was moved to the cathedral in Turin, Italy. It also survived World War II. In the 1970s, a group known as the Shroud of Turin Research Project argued that the cloth was consistent with crucifixion scars. Another group of researchers claimed that they dated the cloth to sometime between 300 BC and 400 AD. But still, others retorted back with their own research, claiming that it couldn't be that old. It was more like 1260 to 1390, and that the blood on the cloth couldn't have originated from Jesus. This year, due to COVID-19, the shroud was shown via live stream for Easter. It was last publicly displayed in 2015, and since Italy was hit quite hard, the Archbishop agreed to the thousands of requests he received from people wanting to see it. Number 4. Codex Higas. The Codex Higas, which means giant book, is a gigantic manuscript from medieval times which weighs around 165 pounds. It is actually the largest medieval manuscript in the world, believed to have been made by just one monk working alone. The 620 pages are almost 3 feet in size. It's not just the size of this manuscript that's kept researchers glued to its pages for years, but the content. It has both the Old and New Testaments, essays covering everything from exorcisms to grammar to medicine, along with incredibly large drawings. One of the most perplexing things about it is an enormous full-page drawing of the devil himself, and the Codex Higas has come to be known as the Devil's Bible. For such a sacred text, how did such a powerful representation of the devil end up inside? Legend goes that the monk broke his vows and was going to be punished. To save himself, he promised to create a book that would glorify the monastery forever and would contain all known human knowledge at the time. Instead of praying to God for help, he prayed to the devil to help him finish the book, and in exchange, he would give up his soul. The devil drawing was added as a bit of a thank you to the Dark Lord. Regardless of what really happened, the National Library of Sweden reports that if the scribe worked for 6 hours a day and wrote 6 days a week, this means that the manuscript could have taken about 5 years to complete. However, as a monk, he may not have been able to work as often, and just making the lines to write on later would have taken hours, not to mention each illustration. The likely estimate is that it most likely took between 20 and 30 years to complete. Definitely a life's masterpiece. The manuscript appeared in the 16th century during the 30 Years' War, when the Holy Roman Emperor's castle was plundered. It can now be found in the National Library of Sweden. You can actually read the whole thing for yourself at the worlddigitallibrary.org. Number 3. Maine Penny. In 1957, a couple of amateur archaeologists turned history upside down when they came upon a truly strange artifact. They were hanging out on a friend's property in Maine exploring the coastline, and they came across a bunch of stone chips, knives, and fire pits. Over the years, they kept going back to explore even more when the weather was good, and it became known as the Goddard Site. However, one discovery stood out from all the rest. They had found a coin, and not just any coin. For years, the friends thought that they had found an English coin from the 12th century in Maine, long before the first English settlers came to America. While that would have been a curious find in itself, the story hit the papers with an article called, "Were the English the First to Discover America?" Professional coin experts saw the photograph and knew exactly what it was: a Norse penny dating back to sometime between 1065 and 1093. But wait, how did a Norse coin from hundreds of years ago end up on Maine's shoreline, inexplicably sailing across the entire Atlantic Ocean? If taken at face value, it serves as evidence for the idea that the Vikings sailed across the ocean and were the first people to arrive to North America centuries before Columbus. But the only Viking site in North America is in Newfoundland, and at the Goddard Site, no other Viking artifact has turned up. What this could also mean is that the Vikings made contact with people in North America and may have traded with them, with the penny getting passed along from trader to trader, only to end up very far from home. There are actually a number of famous Icelandic stories which tell about quests to an unnamed land filled with green pastures. Perhaps it was this area that they were referring to. The penny itself has passed from researcher to researcher, with some believing it is real and others really doubting its authenticity. It doesn't look like coins from other Viking hoards and may have been planted there by the friends. It's hard to say if it was an honest find and whether this is evidence of Vikings arriving to Maine. Number 2. Hoard in Kazakhstan. The Tarbagatai Mountains are a remote and desolate place, but not too far for archaeologists. They recently uncovered a treasure trove of gold artifacts numbering in the thousands. It is believed to belong to royal members of the Saka Society, Eurasian nomads that were believed to be Scythians. The area is covered with around 200 burial mounds, mostly belonging to royals or powerful warlords. The Saka were quite sophisticated and gave very lavish funerals with jewelry like beads, necklaces, precious stones, gold deer figurines, and many other valuable items, as well as spears, chains, and weaponry. These jewels were discovered within a burial mound deep inside of the mountain range, and researchers have dated the find to around 2,800 years ago. Archaeologists are expecting to find the remains of an elite couple, but so far have not yet opened the burial mound. When you consider just how long ago these things were made, the workmanship on the artifacts is very impressive. They indicate that these people were using incredibly advanced, intricate techniques for making jewelry and ornate clothing. They also were known for mining and extraction. There are many more burial mounds in the area, but most of them were robbed and looted long ago. Even Peter the Great got his hands on some Scythian treasure. Experts are very excited to have found this preserved mound and think there is a good chance to find more in the future. Right now, the 3,000 artifacts have been declared priceless. Number 1. Oldest handwritten document. The written word hasn't been around forever, so when archaeologists discover old tablets with inscribed text, they're right to get giddy. That's why when archaeologists uncovered a set of tablets in London with text on them, they were very curious to see where they came from. But they turned out to be older than anyone might have initially imagined. They actually turned out to be the oldest documents with handwriting on them that archaeologists have ever found in Britain. They were discovered in a place you'd never expect, directly underneath a 1950s-era block of offices. Excavators were clearing the block to make way for Bloomberg's new headquarters in Europe when they found the tablets in the mud. These documents are thought to be various notes and agreements that were written some 2,000 years ago. They are the direct writings of the people who lived in the area and give us a glimpse into the Wild West that was this part of the Roman Empire, as NPR.org put it. They give us a glimpse into a carpet-bagging community in the new Wild West frontier of the Roman Empire, said Roger Tomlin, the expert on early Roman writing who spent a year poring over the faint scratches on slivers of fir wood recycled from old barrels. Now known as the Bloomberg tablets, the earliest tablet dates between 43 to 53 AD, which was the first decade that Romans were ruling over the area. 2,000 years later, the tablets are still around thanks to the wet mud that protected the wood from decaying. One is telling a man that everyone in the market is talking about how he lent them money, and another one that is evidence of schooling, as it contains some letters of the alphabet to practice. The technology of its time. Very different from ours, definitely. These tablets are a valuable and intimate peek into this period, and priceless for many scientists and anthropologists. The Museum of London Archaeology, or MOLA, will be putting the 700 artifacts found at the site on display for the public to see what life was like in the same place 2,000 years ago. Thanks for watching! Which discovery was your favorite? Let me know in the comments below. Mine was definitely the Sakal burial mounds. I definitely want to learn more about them. Remember to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up for more. See you next time! Bye!